Okay, a little update. So I took the engine apart. The head looked pretty good. I didn't see any real issues in there at all. The rocker arms don't really have a whole lot of, too much wear to them. And then these channels are fairly smooth. The cam and the lobes of the cam, we've got a little bit of discoloration, but they're fairly smooth. It does show some signs of wear, but again, nothing really rough at all. So that seemed to check out. The head, the exhaust and intake valves look to be seated fairly decent. Certainly some carbon buildup there. And then I took off the cylinder, and the cylinder looks pretty good too. I don't see any big issues in there, any scoring or anything. Looks, obviously some wear, but looks pretty good. So I end up having to take the motor off of the frame just to be able to get the head off. I don't know if there was another way of doing it, but that's what I did. So the piston itself looks decent, but in the front just seems like it has a very rough texture to it. It's not a very smooth piston, which is a bit odd. It almost looks kind of somewhat new, but I wanted to see how much play was in here, and there's definitely some side-to-side movement, within the wrist pin here, which I think is normal. But the problem I'm noticing is the knocking of the connecting rod, and the bearing and the lower connecting rod area I think is shot. So I think that was the noise. I know there's going to be some play, but I think that might be too much. There's a little bit of side to side movement back and forth in the connecting rod, but there's a lot of vertical play, too much vertical play, I think. So I think that was my issue. So I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do at this point. So I gotta do a little more research and figure out if that's something easily replaceable and how difficult. I've never really split a case before, so that'll be a learning curve, definitely. So I have a better perspective now, looking in here. Hopefully there's enough light, but I don't know if you can see the play and that lower bearing for the connecting rod. Definitely more than what it should be. Let me see if I can. So, not good. The engine's out, got it on the workbench, and I opened up the clutch cover, drained the oil. The oil looked like there was a lot of metallic pieces in it, really small, very fine. So not sure if it was, just coming from the clutch plates and someone hadn't changed the oil in a while, or if it was mainly coming off of the piston, because the front side of the piston has got a lot of abrasion, or very minor pitting. I can't figure out what that would be from, unless it was just bouncing around in the cylinder, because the cylinder's pretty clean and smooth. So, but I don't really see anything inside here that it looks really bad. It's relatively clean, and everything is situated as it should. I did want to take a look at this oil screen here, see if I can film it and pull it. Definitely a lot of debris in there. although this doesn't look too bad. I'll clean that up, but there's definitely a lot of gunk on the bottom, which might be kind of typical for engine this age and wear. So we'll keep digging. So the saga continues. I did a little further research, watched some YouTube videos, and came across something about the cam with journal where the cam goes. And once I cleaned this all up, I took a closer look at it with a magnifying glass, and I could really feel around. And it's definitely the cam chain or cam sprocket side, cam chain side is worn pretty heavily. It looked like it almost kind of melted and pancaked. The sides here, there's a good sharp edge here on either side. So when I was looking at it before, when you place it in here, it's pretty tight. It's snug. There's no movement. So once I placed everything back together, I noticed there was a ton of movement in the cam here. Again, mainly on the chain side. There's a little bit on the back side, but definitely not as much as the front. So this actually has more play than the connecting rod bearing, the lower bearing, although there may be kind of the same. There's some side-to-side play in the piston, but there's no up and down movement within the wrist pin. So definitely need a new crank connecting rod bearing on the crank. I don't know how to replace that yet. I've got to figure out if I have to buy a whole new assembly, which means I'll probably have to buy a used one, or if there's a way to pull it apart and replace the bearing. But the plan is for this, I've seen different repairs where this can be ground down in an actual bearing sleeve goes in this place. But I think what we're going to do, because there's no side-to-side movement, I'm going to take the springs off and the valves out, and my father's got a 6-inch wide belt sander, and I'm just going to sand the top of this down until I get to a point where there's no more vertical play left when it's clamped in place. I'll have to kind of clean this up and grind this down just a little bit, just so it matches the clearance on this side. Also going to clean up these edges, but by bringing it down, half a millimeter, I'm not really sure. I'll have to use a feeler gauge to see what I really have in there. It'll take the play out of it. Shouldn't cause any issues with the cover. There should be enough clearance inside the cover. We're only talking a minimal amount just to gap that. There's a little bit of grooves in the cam, but for the most part it's pretty good. I'll probably rough that up with some sandpaper, and then in here too there's a little bit of grooving on the rocker bracket here. But again, it's steel, so it is what it is. I'm just gonna try to do the minimalist approach to this, cheapest cost to get it back running. And if it runs well, if I can get it through a whole season, then maybe next winter I'll maybe upgrade to a bigger cylinder and piston at that point. But for now, considering the situation, the condition of everything, I'm just gonna repair or replace the things that are absolutely necessary, and then just deal with the rest of it. So for what I'm going to use it for, it should be fine. Alright, so I just got through with using the belt sander on the head to try to reduce the gap that I had with the cam. So I've sanded this down. I probably shaved off a, I don't know, 1/16 of an inch or so. It went pretty quick. I had to keep on checking it. So now there's really no play left. When I push down on this, the actual cam is a little hard to spin free. So I'm gonna just have to clean up the cam a bit and the journals to get that, you know, so it spins a bit freer. I don't want to bind it, but I think I got it pretty good. There's no more play on the front or back here, so I think I've solved that problem, and that was actually pretty simple, pretty easy. Highly recommended doing that over some of the other repair methods that I've seen. So onward. Okay, so fast forward, split the cases here. That was relatively easy. Nothing major so far other than just some kind of dirty oil, and so nothing too earth-shattering in here. It definitely needs a good cleanup, but I think it should go back together. I was able to slide the crank out really easy, and it's definitely the lower connecting rod bearing that is shot. I did have one needle bearing fall out somewhere in the case as I was splitting it apart. So I'm assuming it somehow came out of the connecting rod bearing, although there's not much gap for it to really slip through there. So that's got me a little concerned. I don't know where else that would have come from. But the bearings are good. No play in the bearings. They roll free and clear. All the metal on the crankshaft looks good. You know, some very minor rusting, but not bad. So I gotta see if I can find a machine shop to pull the crankshaft apart and replace the bearing here. You know, the bearing's only $15, so. It just depends on how much it's going to cost me to have it separated and replaced. And then once that's done, I can put everything back together. I checked the piston is in good shape. I just did some minor sanding on the front side of the piston just to kind of smooth things up a bit. Use a 320 grit sandpaper. It's just nice and smooth. It didn't really take much down. Cleaned it up. Looks good. And we hone the cylinder, and got the cams situated where there's no cam play. So it's all ready to be put back together here as soon as I get the bearing replaced. Another update here. I think this is update number 12. I did find a machine shop. It was called Dad's Machine Shop. My dad had all of the required tools needed to separate the crank. So we tried to see if we could get it apart, and it worked with the automotive crank separators that he had. So found some interesting results here from that. The lower connecting rod bearing is completely shot. All of the needle bearings are kind of broken in half, and there's a lot of flat spots to them. And then obviously the metal cage that holds them together was kind of broken in half there. So definitely a lot of wear happening. I'm surprised it wasn't worse. Again, I had that one needle bearing fall out of the case, so Whether it came from here, who knows. But the bearings are in good shape, so we're going to reuse those. There's definitely a lot of wear to the pin here. I don't know if you can see that amount. There's definitely a little ridge here. So I can find a part for this. It is available, so I'm going to reorder that, and we'll press that out and press a new one in. I found a connecting rod. I think there's, it looks like there's a little bit of wear, a little scoring on the inside of the connecting rod. So just to be safe, I'm going to order a new one. This is the most expensive part. I think this is like 30. The bearing is like, I don't know, 15, 20. These are cheap, but I don't need them. They're only like 20 bucks to get new bearings. But this is more like $100 item. But you know, having all new parts to the crankshaft should be good to go for the lower end.